It's hard to believe the new iPad Pro is now 6 months old, but I have been using it since then, and in this video I wanted to tell you what it's been like and if it's actually been worth the upgrade for me from my older M1 iPad Pro. So let's get into it. Oh, and apologies about my voice, I haven't been feeling massively well lately. Okay, let's talk about whether the base model is enough first, because that's the model I've actually been using. So that's 256GB, 11-inch screen, and in the silver. And I can pretty happily say, even with my kind of creator bias, that it's been perfectly good. Not once have I seen any noticeable lag or stutter or anything in what I'm doing. And even in higher powered stuff like gaming or video editing or photo editing, which is something I do a huge amount, I've not noticed any lag or anything like that at all. And also it's been fine on the storage front as well. 256GB for an iPad for me seems to work out just fine. I've used about 100 gig of storage on here, and that's with a few high level games and a lot of pro apps installed as well, and I found that to be completely fine for me. Your experience may vary on that. If you want to edit loads of video or have loads and loads of storage on your iPad, then obviously you're going to need more, but for me it's actually been absolutely fine. So I'm really happy to say that the base model of this iPad Pro has been really wonderful for everything that I've needed to do with it. Oh, and if you're enjoying the video, consider subscribing to this channel. I'm trying to hit 200k before the year is out. This is also the first year in ages that I've opted for the 11-inch iPad Pro over the 13 or the 12.9 inch, and I've got an entire video on why that is, so I'll link it up here if you want to check it out, and I'll put it down below. But a tiny summary is the best screen is no longer locked behind getting the biggest iPad, and that was always a big draw for me. I got a MacBook Air this year, which ate into a lot of the usage, and I was also just finding myself reaching for the iPad mini all the time and not using the 13-inch very much. So it's worth watching that video if you want to know kind of in more detail of why that is. Obviously, one of the bigger upgrades this year round though was the tandem OLED screen. It's wonderful. The iPad basically is a screen, so anytime you put on a better screen, it's just going to be a better experience overall. And the OLED is truly wonderful. You get those deep blacks, popping colors, and the screen is crazy bright as well. I've never had any issues with that at all, especially when I'm outside or in any difficult lighting conditions. I will say though, in isolation, it's kind of easy to forget that you have it, and it's not until you look at another screen or another iPad screen that there's that stark reminder of how much nicer this OLED is. And look, I would love to sit here and tell you that it's made me a better creator and the colors have made me better at this and all those sorts of things, but the truth is it hasn't really, but it has made me enjoy using the iPad more, so that's probably something in itself. And I have to admit as well, I don't actually watch much stuff on my iPad. If you're a huge movie watcher or a huge watcher of any kind of series or Netflix like that, I'm sure this upgrade will probably feel a lot more kind of useful for you. But for me, the iPad is very much kind of like a creative tool. And while I appreciate the bigger screen in every way possible, I'm not watching stuff on here. I'm always using it to write notes or to design something or just help it to organize my kind of wider creative stuff. Oh, and if you do like the wallpapers in this video, this is from my new pack. This is the Bound Pack 3. The other two were so popular that we ended up making this third pack, and they look truly stunning across your mobile, desktop, and iPad, or any device that you put it on. We worked really hard on these and we're really happy with how they turned out, so if you want to help support the channel, I'll link them in the description below. When it comes to how this has been handling my workflows though, a lot of what I do on an iPad comes down to doing a lot of note taking, a lot of design work in Procreate, the odd bit of video editing, and also using it a lot as a secondary monitor for my Mac with universal control. And for all of that, the performance has been completely fine. I was expecting to see like a pretty huge leap with the M4 over the M1, and it is a beat quicker here and there, especially when you open up those bigger apps, but otherwise it's felt really similar. And that's not a bad thing. iPads have been fast for the longest time, and the fact that this will clearly remain fast into the future is a good thing. Some of those apps do have kind of like specific M4 updates, like Procreate gets loads more layers and things like that, but for what I do, I haven't really noticed or needed it. What I did notice though were in games like Zenless Zone Zero, which is one I generally always show off, is because it just looks so good, and the standard game settings for graphics on the M4 is completely wild. This runs at a crazy smooth 60 FPS, you get the hardware accelerated ray tracing as well, and everything you do in this game just looks absolutely stunning, and it doesn't skip a beat either. I never have to shut other apps or anything like that to make sure it runs really nicely. It just runs like an absolute dream. Obviously you can use this iPad plugged into an external monitor with Stage Manager and all that sort of stuff, but I generally find I don't need that, especially with the setup that I've got at the moment. But that's the only time where you do feel a small amount of heat coming from the iPad. If you're playing a game for about an hour or so, then you'll feel it a lot there as well. But it's never to the detriment of the iPad. I've never seen any kind of clear slowdown with this, at least not in how I've been using it. Again, that will change depending on who you are and what you're doing with an iPad. But for me, the heat and thermals and things like that have all been completely fine. It's never been too hot to hold or to handle or uncomfortable in any way at all. And those workflows basically lead me to the Apple Pencil Pro, which is a tool that I was pretty enamored with when Apple announced it, and I already included it in another video saying how much I like it. And that's pretty much rung true of this 6 months later. I do really like what the Apple Pencil Pro brings to the table. And the best thing for me is it's sped up my workflows, which is always a useful thing. Mainly for me has been the squeeze one. This just lets you access the pencil tools. And if you do a lot of note taking or a lot of work in Procreate, you know how much you go to the edge of the screen to kind of get tools that you need and bring them back in. So to have them there then on the tip of your pencil is just really, really useful. I tend to like this so much that when I go back to an older pencil, I try squeezing it and then remembering it doesn't work. What I will say though is if you're an artist or someone who's looking to upgrade specifically for the Pencil Pro, I don't really know if there's like loads or enough here for you to really warrant that. Sure, the extra features are nice, but for me, I would say it's more of a quality of life improvement rather than something that's absolutely essential, unless you really need that very specific things from it, like barrel roll. And let's face it, you can get that effect in a lot of apps anyway. But yeah, I am a really big fan of the Pencil Pro. One of the other nicer upgrades with this new series of iPad Pros as well is the reduction in size and weight, which has actually been really nice for portability. And look, iPads were portable anyway, it was never going to be a big issue to take one around with you, but having the lighter weight just means I've always put this in my bag whenever I kind of leave the studio or go home for the day or anything like that. And battery life is still as good as ever. I can probably get around 2 or 3 days of use on how I use my iPad before I need to charge it up or something like that. Sometimes even a week, depending on how I'm using it. But if you use it all the time, you're going to get through a day here, no problems at all. You are going to see the battery life kind of take a hit if you do a lot of gaming, or if you're sitting in video editors for like 4 or 5 hours, then sure, that's going to take more power out of it. But this is easily going to live up to what you're hoping to get from it. And for me, on a portability point as well, I've actually stopped using my iPad mini pretty much completely. I found I was using my iPad mini all the time when I had my 13-inch because I didn't want to take that one out with me. But now that I'm onto the 11-inch, this is clearly the sweet spot. And I don't feel like this is too much to take with me wherever I go, which is what I was using the iPad mini for. Okay, let's talk about things that I haven't liked, because there's still plenty here which I don't think is perfect on the iPad Pro. And first up, iPadOS is still iPadOS, and I was actually hoping we might get a really nice sort of update to it with the M4. This is half the reason why I didn't talk much about it in the lead up to this, because I was hoping WWDC or some later kind of update later in the year would come that would really show off the power of the M4. And sure, that's being used with the tandem OLED, I get that. But when it comes to things like external monitor support, where I thought we might see like a kind of meaningful upgrade, it's not. It's sadly the same as it's been for a while, with all of its weird little intricacies and things like that. And I think the biggest thing for me is I don't really feel like I'm seeing the power of that M4 chip. That's Apple's best processing power and everything at the moment, all thrown into an iPad. And it still feels like I'm just doing kind of standardy iPad stuff with it, which is great, and I love it for that. But I was really hoping for that kind of nice, like, wow, and now you can do this because you've got the M4. And that didn't really seem to arrive this year. And iPadOS 18 doesn't feel kind of meaningfully different in any way. I know you can move the icons around and change the appearance and things like that, which is something I actually haven't done because I don't particularly enjoy that look. But yeah, iPadOS is more or less the same, and I was really hoping we might see something really interesting with that this year with the M4, but we didn't. I also forgot to mention that Apple Intelligence still isn't here, and I hate to sound like a broken record because I've mentioned that a lot, but I still haven't been able to use it with this iPad, so I still can't tell you if it's going to be a killer feature or not. Now, that's obviously coming to the M series iPads anyway, but the M4 chip is supposed to be the flagship for that. But again, it's not something I can test right now, so I still can't really say. Okay, finally, to wrap this video up, was it worth me switching? And for context, I came from the 12.9-inch M1 iPad Pro from 2021, so this felt like a reasonable kind of timescale to upgrade in, especially being a creator in the kind of creator space. And I'll be honest, I think the biggest upgrade for me was switching to the 11-inch over the big one. I've had the big one for years now, and I kind of forgotten how nice the 11-inch version is, and that's definitely helped with me using it more, my workflows in general, and being able to separate it up from a MacBook properly. But I actually think I would probably have had a very similar result if I just switched to an M1 version of the 11-inch as well. That's still a fantastic iPad, and I think it would cover pretty much everything I needed. And look, I do love the upgrades here. The OLED display is gorgeous, and I am a big fan of the Pencil Pro, like I've said, but I don't think it's been completely worth it. And I do think that's because I was coming from an M series anyway. So if you don't have an M series iPad, then the M4 one is a really amazing one to jump up to. But I'm going to echo what I said in the review of this M4 iPad Pro. If you already have an M series, then you probably don't need to jump up to this one unless you've got a really specific reason to do so. Anyway, that wraps up my thoughts and feelings 6 months later with the M4 iPad Pro. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, pop a like. And if you've been using this, or if you've been thinking about getting one or anything like that, let me know in the comments below, because I always love to see what you have to say, and I will see you all in the next one.